Okay, Jack, I watched all of your swings. I thought this was the best one. And talking about why I thought it was the best is this was the best job that you did as far as, like, okay, I got my toe down, my hands didn't start to come back, or my hands didn't start to come forward at all. I would encourage you as you work on what you're doing on your stride. You're pretty far behind your head. That's going to be a pretty awkward spot to come from. I would recommend, being more towards a 45-degree angle with the angle of your bat. Um, as we look, your top hand is, about a fist away from your back shoulder. That'll work in that regard. It's two things that I would point out. One, I would try to stay a little bit more stacked up, a little taller, because the whole thing that we want to try to do, Jack, is speed up the way that our lower half goes. Okay, that's the big thing that I see with your swing. And as you just look at your posture there, you see that you've got, a little bit of where kind of like bending over towards home plate, like I'm really not stacked up. I'm really not in a super position. You don't have to be standing upright, but I think that the position that you're in there makes it a little bit difficult to turn your hips. Again, I'm really glad that your hands are still going back to the time your toe touches. And as you get into immediate preparation, meaning your heel is in the ground, right? You can see that your hands are still back pretty good. As I zoom in here and set a pivot point there. Let's see if it locks out. It slides just a little bit, which is what I assumed it would. So by the time you get your heel into the ground, which is there, that front hip should not move. And you can see how it slides a little bit as you rotate, okay? And the reason it does that is I would recommend that you just continue to work on how we move our lower half early. So I'm watching, you get into hip load, and you've got a negative movement, but here's what worries me on that negative movement, is what that's doing. See how your knee's turning out? See that? That move right there is what throws off, making it so hard to turn your lower half ahead of your upper half, right? So by the time we get to impact, we've still got like a really big gap that's in here, right? That backside needs to release a little bit more, and we're not completely locked out yet at contact, okay? And I think what's going to make us more effective with the way our lower half moves, the way our whole swing, and what makes our lower half move better, is as you rock into hip load, like that's fine, but as soon as you catch your back hip, right, we want to avoid this move there. See how your knee goes back right there, right there, right there, right? Instead, we want all of this stuff going forward. So rock back into hip load. Now just go before we get that knee turning. So as you watch yourself on film, just watch what your back knee's doing, because as it turns out there, then it makes it difficult to get a real efficient rotation, right? And just let that backside release. That back knee comes almost up to that front knee, because when we're at impact here, let me zoom out, okay? And we put the old line, and get a straight line here. We don't really have that line that goes, like I showed with the Matt Delvo example, through our back knee, through our back hip, through our back shoulder, and through our head. And I think what throws us off, I like, again, how we're got the idea that we are striding the load here, and our hands haven't started to come forward, but I would be a little bit more stacked up. But the big thing is we're going to be able to move our hips better. See how tall you are there? See how down you get there? I just think that it's tough for you to get a real quick turn from that position, right? Is just continue to work on, hey, my back knee is not going, oops, let me get back to my sketch here. Wait, which one? Here it is. That back knee doesn't go back out like that. You can just see how it kind of gets stuck, and it makes it harder for our hip to go. So as we see the whole thing, and we're looking at the relationship between this going and this going, it starts out okay, but it just has a hard time keeping going. And the arms eventually get a little bit ahead and we get that around action. Let me unzoom that. And I'll just roll through. We get a little bit stuck on our backside and we just get a little bit slow with our turn, and our turn just kind of stops and we don't get our hip all the way through. Let that sucker just go. Just watch how the major leaguers are doing it in the sample that I posted. But if we get off of that backside, that back knee early, we don't have that back knee turn out, then you'll see as you get your heel into the ground there, you're going to watch, where's your heel into the ground? About there. You're going to watch that front hip point and see that it doesn't slide forward just a little bit.